Third meeting of the House Standing Committee on Local Government. It's now officially called to order. Will the committee assistants please call the roll?
Representative Bentley, Representative Bowling, Representative Bray, Representative Brown,
Here.
Representative Chester Burton,
Here.
Representative Dixon, Representative Doan,
Present.
Representative Fleming, Representative Frazier Gordon,
Yes.
Representative Freeland, Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Here.
Representative Justice, Representative Lockett,
Here.
Representative Meredith, Representative Proctor,
Here.
Representative Raymer,
Here.
Representative Stalker,
Present.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Thomas,
Present.
Chairman Bridges.
Here. There being a quorum present, we're constituted to do business. Do any of the members have any introductions they'd like to make? Not seeing any, I am going to turn the chair over to Vice Chair Representative Fleming to take the next motions. Thank you.
As the chairman makes his way to the on the desk, I wanted to go ahead and let y'all know that first on the list is HCR 68 and Councilman Bridge or Councilman. Sorry about that, Chairman. Chairman Bridge, you mind go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're from, and then you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Randy Bridges, District 3 in McCracken and Livingston counties, and I'll let my cohort here introduce himself also.
Jason Nemus, State Representative, House District 33, Jefferson, Oldham, Shelby Counties.
Chairman and committee, we have before you today HCR 68. It is a resolution directing the establishment of the Kentucky Housing Task Force, and the purpose of this task force is to address the housing needs that we're finding that we're in crisis with here in the state of Kentucky and the Commonwealth. There are right now there's currently a need of over 78,000 rental units that are we're short on inventory, and that's in the rental segment. In the for sale department, there's been a drop of over 16% over the last few years in houses on the market and inventory on that. So this is an effort to address a broad span of the housing needs in Kentucky. What brought this to my attention is the chair of local government. I've had several members come to me with bill drafts, with actual bills that they filed, and concerning the housing needs in our Commonwealth. And there is a great shortage. It affects all aspects from the homeless all the way up to the retirees. And it also has a great economic impact on our on the businesses wanting to come because of the lack of workers and workforce inventory that we have too, because they can't find housing. So with all the different avenues that's been offered up on the table, I've worked with Representative Nemus.
Motion on the bill.
Second. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any questions to the chairman and to the Whip Nemus? Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Chairman, what is the outcome that you're looking for as far as the deliberations on the House concurrent resolution, and what are we expecting to get out of that?
The purpose is to bring in all aspects that have to do with housing, from the Kentucky Housing Coalition that deals a lot with homelessness and low-income housing, all the way up to like the home builders, the AGC, the realtors, all the different professions that take part in this, and see if we can identify roadblocks that's preventing us to produce this housing, make it available, what the cost overruns are, and even talk to industries that for one reason or another may not have came to Kentucky and see what if that was a part of it. So this is a broader spectrum, because the way I look at it is it's like a ladder or a set of steps. If you can open up one opening in that ladder, then the step below it can step up and fill that. Like with home sales, if we don't have the inventory, we can't fill the homes that people want to buy. So they are taking up rental units that could be available for that market. And if we could open that up, then each level rises up. And we want to look at, ways out of homelessness all the way to retirees moving out of houses that they no longer need and moving into smaller units so that each one of those levels could open up. So it's a comprehensive approach, and that's the intent, and to identify what roadblocks in every different department are could be preventing us and causing this problem.
Mr. Chairman, nothing. A couple of weeks ago, the House passed a bill, and I don't know the bill number right now off the top of my head, but it talked about folks that have vouchers and not renting to those people, and that a landlord has the right to choose who they rent to, and the source of their income is being, say, from a federal agency. How would this task force address that problem?
That's one of those. It's a separate bill. So, and I'm not here representing that bill, but if that bill passes, it'll solve itself. If it doesn't, that's something that that bill sponsor can bring to this committee and put it on the table so we can take that into consideration also. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I think so. And if I could, Representative Brown, answer the previous question also. I agree with everything that the chairman said. I would also note that in my community, I'm sure it's very similar in your community, we have 30,000. We're 30,000 behind on affordable housing. So I think there are two major problems that this is supposed to get at. There's a lot of issues, but the two major problems are, one, the affordable housing question. To be sure, we're 30 behind. We need to get those folks opportunities for housing. But also, as you know, in your community, I'm sure I've looked in your community and mine, and I know Northern Kentucky, all over the Commonwealth, we're pricing out the working family. And so if you're a nurse, if you're a teacher, if you're a post officeman, if you're just a regular, just workaday person, it's difficult to be able to afford housing right now. And so we're trying to figure out how can we increase the inventory for that group as well. And so that's, in my view, the two major things we're trying to get here. But there's a number of other ones also.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go right ahead.
There seems to be a squeezing of what's happening in our cities. I know in Lexington that's happening, and the affordable housing is a problem, and whether it's rental or whether it's ownership. And I think that we have done some things with that bill that was passed that will exacerbate the issues and concerns of people, of the Lexington Fayette Urban County government and our constituents, and probably same thing in Metro Louisville and other areas across the state. So I would hope that we would be mindful of that discussion as we put this concurrent resolution in place and have a task force to talk about that. I think it's one of those things that is of paramount importance.
Right. You're talking about House Bill 18, which passed the House and is in the Senate now. The design of that bill is to give property owners more power and control over their own units. We've had it in Louisville. I know Lexington was considering it. We've had it in Louisville. I'm not aware that there have been problems in Louisville. If there are, then we can revisit the issue. This effort is a much more global effort to try to get to the problem. And you said renting and homeownership, both of those are very important. But you and I know, Representative, the best way to accumulate wealth in our society is to try to get somebody into ownership. They can accumulate, they can give it to their kids, and that's I think paramount, at least in my mind. Renting is very important, no doubt about that. We want to incentivize that, but we also want to try to get people a little bit of ownership as well.
And there, I want to follow up on that. There was a lot of consideration. We had two housing resolutions. Representative Nemus had the Affordable Housing Task Force. I had the Attainable Housing Task Force. And what we did is we got together. We talked to the bill writer. We combined both of them. His was the affordable housing on lower income and what he's talked about. Mine, I'm a real estate broker. I understand the inventory needs and the lack of inventory out there. And home ownership, what he said is right spot on. If you can get a family into home ownership, that's the number one way to build wealth, and that's the American dream. So we want to work both of those rather than go two separate ways and focus on two different areas. We can take a comprehensive approach and bring everyone to the table one time, see what those problems are, and hopefully out of this there'll be a commonality that starts growing to where we can look and pass some very valuable bills that will address all these issues.
Mr. Chairman, real quick, I think Chairman Bridges was going to say before the motion, we were also working with Representative Nima Kulkarni and Senator Julie Rocky Adams on these bills, resolutions.
Let me go, if you don't mind, Representative, I have some other people on the line. If you just hold on, I'll come back to you. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Representative
Hope I
Stevenson.
remember.
Excuse me, I have a question. This task force that's looking at affordable housing, how is it impacted by, well, let me ask it a different way. Did we put money in this year's budget to deal with this issue?
This
the
year's
affordable housing.
Yeah, I think there will be. This year's budget is just the first step of 4, I think, or how many steps there are. I believe at the end of the day, there's going to be some hopefully significant fundings for affordable housing.
So in the House
And we put
version-
some that was already in the base, but increased dollars, I think we're looking to increase that.
So there's a base. The House bill has.
Right.
Okay. Secondly, did we, as according to what the representative said, we just forwarded a rule saying that landlords get to choose whom they rent to. How does that work with a task force that says we're trying to get more people into houses and homes?
Yeah, I don't know that those things are contradictory. If the experience of the times shows that they are, then we're going to have to reverse course. Louisville's had that ordinance for a while that said that they couldn't discriminate against folks with the vouchers. It's been nowhere else in the Commonwealth. And so, we'll see how that works. And obviously, there's still a major problem in Louisville, even though they have that. I don't think they conflict. If they do, we'll have to reverse course. We need to make sure that we're getting housing for folks, Colonel. And sorry, Representative, apologize. And
Colonel's
so,
good.
What's that?
Colonel's good.
Okay, Colonel's good. Yeah. So we believe in that, but we also believe that that landlords, developers, private entities should have their rights to their private property as well. For example, right now we're building a lot of apartments in Louisville, not enough, but we're also building a lot of housing for the wealthy. Okay, fine, that's great. That's the developer's prerogative. What we need to try to do is to try to incentivize developers, because they're the ones who own the land or are developing the land, to increase the inventory of other populations. But we don't want to do that in a way that disrespects the right of the owner of the property. And I think that's where House Bill 18 would come in, but which is not this bill.
Right. And then the last question.
Go ahead.
The last question is, how long will this task force take, and what do we do about the people that are having difficulties right now?
Well, the task force is set up for the next year, and it'll come up with a comprehensive report afterwards with the findings. And a lot of your questions, you ask, working with the builders, it may not be, we're going to have to look at some zoning issues. We're going to have to look at some restrictions, but we're also going to have to look at permitting. We're going to have to look at the time frame it takes. And a lot of these can expedite this process to get more units on the market sooner. So you're asking for questions that we may not have the answer for, but that's the whole purpose of this task force, to find the answers to those questions. And the purpose of the task force is to ask those questions so we know what we're looking for and get the answers for that.
Then I sign up publicly for the task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I just want to throw in, it's about 2 cents, and I'm going to go to Representative Stalker in a second, and then I'll go to or Representative Brown. When these task force, we put these task force together for a purpose, and that is to flesh out as much as we can in terms of coming up with a plan and a strategy in order to go forward. When you go through this task force or any task force, you always take an inventory of what's currently going on, and then you look at the strengths and weaknesses of that particular area that you're trying to come up with, and then look at some strategies and set up the framework in order to go forward, so local government and other entities can bridge off of that framework in order to go forward. And I just want to make sure y'all may be mindful of that type of structure. That's how I view that. Representative Stalker.
Thank you. Couple questions. The first is, I always say that our responsibility as legislators is we can't be an expert in everything. So I appreciate the fact that we are looking to form the task force. I'm in full support of that. So I want to make sure that that's clear right out of the gate. Our jobs is not to be an expert in everything, but our job is to bring those experts to the table. And what I'm curious about is, and not only, so bringing them to the table is the first thing. The second thing is believing what they have to say. They will tell you where the barriers are that people are experiencing specifically with housing. And the third thing is the hardest. It's our job then we have to believe them. We have to believe that they have a better understanding of the issue than we do. So that being said, I'm looking at the suggestion for the way this group would be compromised: 10 legislators, 8 from the House and Senate majorities, and 1 from the minority caucuses. I'm just curious if we have the ability to expand on the individuals who can participate in that, so that it's not just one member from the minority. And I'd also like to know about bringing organizations who are closest to the housing issue to the table, as well as individuals with lived experiences.
If you look in here, it says it's going to bring different organizations in, and that is our priority, to bring experts in. That we are not experts on every process. Now, on the makeup of the task force, I think if you look back over the last few years, the makeup of task forces have changed. Leadership cannot force entities to come and be a part of a task force. They can put legislators on it to get as many legislators on that task force as possible. But as far as the breakup, right now, LRC wrote this down as the current percentage of House and Senate members and majority, minority. It would be strictly up to leadership how they choose to go about doing any further. This is, from what I understand, this is the minimums, and then it'll be up to the House and Senate leadership to determine any more legislators to be on that. But the individuals, I can tell you right now, I've spent this last interim and the current session working with the home builders, the AGC, and there's things like permitting. How long does it take to get a permit? And if it sits on a desk somewhere for 8-10 weeks or several months, and you miss that window of opportunity, I'm also a builder, developer, and I understand what happens if you miss that window of opportunity to get that foot in the ground and it starts raining. That could put you off for 3 months. Well, we've seen inflation over the last few years, the difference in cost, overruns, the availability of contractors that if you can't meet their window, then they may be tied up another 6 months. So you can push some projects out. I've had developers in my office telling me, explaining those situations too, which I do understand that part, but there are so many entities out there. We do want to bring the Housing Coalition. I actually am co-chair of the Affordable Housing Caucus. So for the past several years, we've had several entities in, and we are building that list now and putting it down, putting everyone on it. And it is hard. Like I'm a real estate broker, and working with the Kentucky Realtors, it's hard for them right now just to fill the positions of their boards and different committees, because it's hard for these individuals to commit to 10 months, 1 meeting a month for 10 months. They just can't do it. So what we've done, we as legislators can commit ourselves to that. They can't, these organizations, but they can do a comprehensive report and bring their best person in to testify for whatever time needed in this, so that we can get that information. And we're already started. I have already started putting feelers out and telling them, start getting your list together, decide what, if this passes, and there's no guarantee, this is up to leadership. But if we get this forward and we get this moving, we are already working on that even in the session right now. And any group that you feel has an expertise that needs to be heard, I would suggest you bring that to us and we'll add it to our list. Is it?
Yes, sir.
No?
Yes, sir.
Do you have one more?
I just wanted to say I appreciate those comments. I personally have a lot of interest in this, and I feel like several of my colleagues in the Democratic Party specifically that have put forth bills to try to address things in past years, and including this year. So While that is not to your discretion, I would just like to openly state that I hope that this is something our leadership is interested and willing to do, to bring all really interested parties to the table, give them the ability to be a part of this. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, leadership's discussed this, but I do want to correct one thing. If this passes, it's up to the members, not leadership. Members make the determination on what law goes into effect.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Representative Brown, you have the last question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got two, if you don't mind. My first question is, how will the Kentucky Housing Corporation play a role in this task force?
I'm assuming a massive role.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the numbers that we're using for rental units, availability and everything, that come from the Kentucky Housing Coalition. So they've already been a part of this,
Are
and
there
they will continue to be a part of
Okay.
it.
Are there seats designated for members of the Kentucky Housing Corporation?
There are only seats designated for legislators at this moment.
Okay. The Representative Nemus, you pointed out that the generational wealth that could be generated from home ownership.
Right.
And I think it's problematic when we have people that are paying $7,000-8,000 a month for rent, but cannot qualify for home ownership. Can this committee deal with that issue as well?
That's the hope, obviously, and we've got bankers on this committee, or a banker on this committee. Hopefully, his knowledge will be brought to bear as well. So that, of course, that's the hope. If you're paying that much money in rent, hope you can rent if you want to, but you need to be owning.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Representative. And nobody else has questions? All right, well, very good. We'll just go ahead and, Clerk, could you go ahead and call the roll?
Representative Bowling,
Yes.
Representative Bray, Representative Brown,
Yes.
Representative Chester Burton,
Yes.
Representative Dixon, Representative Doan, Representative Fleming,
Aye.
Representative Frazier Gordon, Representative Freeland,
Yes.
Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Lockett,
Yes.
Representative Meredith, Representative Proctor,
Yes.
Representative Raymer, Representative Stalker,
Yes.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Thomas,
Aye.
Chairman Bridges.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously. I'll go to the floor. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and call up House Bill 323. And Representative Frazier Gordon, when you get to the desk, just go ahead and introduce yourself, and then you have the floor. And I will turn this back over to the chair.
Thank you, Chairman and members. I'm Representative Deanna Frazier Gordon, House District 81 in Madison County. Firefighters have a 9% greater risk of developing cancer and a 14% higher rate of mortality once diagnosed.
Hey, can you pull that mic up closer, please? Mm-hmm. And make sure
Is
it's
that better?
on. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's on. Okay. I'll start over. Firefighters have a 9% greater risk of developing cancer and a 14% higher rate of mortality once diagnosed. Since 2016, 70% of all in-line duty deaths are attributed to occupational cancer. Firefighters currently have in place a Firefighter Foundation Program Fund. House Bill 323 would simply allow reimbursement of cancer screenings as an approved use of these funds.
Motion on the bill.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Representative Bowling, Representative Bray, Representative Brown,
Yes.
Representative Chester Burton,
Yes.
Representative Dixon, Representative Doan, Representative Fleming,
Aye.
Representative Frazier Gordon,
Yes.
Representative Freeland,
Yes.
Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Lockett,
Yes.
Representative Meredith, Representative Proctor,
Yes.
Representative Raymer, Representative Stalker,
I'd like to explain my vote. I am a resounding yes, and I just want to thank you so much for bringing this forward. I have been in discussions myself with our firefighters, and this is desperately needed, and I deeply appreciate you bringing this, to the committee.
Representative Stevenson,
Yes.
Representative Thomas,
Aye.
Chairman Bridges.
Yes. The motion carries with favorable expression that the bill should pass. Thank you,
Chairman.
Representative.
Thank you, members.
Okay, at this time, we're going to be calling up House Bill 388 with Representative Fleming, and we're waiting on Representative Nemus. He had to check in over at Judiciary, so the House will stand at ease. The House will come back out of it ease and stand at attention, I guess. We have Representative Nemus here, so if you gentlemen don't mind to introduce yourselves and your guest, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Nemus, State Representative, 33rd District, Jefferson, Oldham, Shelby Counties.
Representative Ken Fleming, represent the 48th District. That's part of Jefferson and Oldham County.
Mayor Bonnie Jung. I am the mayor of the city of Douglas Hills and past president of Jefferson County League of Cities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to start by saying that merger in Louisville occurred over 20 years ago, which merged our county government, county and city governments. Last year, this, yes, sir.
Do we have a committee sub?
We do, yes, sir.
Motion. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Sub carries, so proceed now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So over 20 years ago, Louisville Metro merged its city and county governments. Last year, the legislature passed House Bill 314, which put together a commission to look at a merger and how we can improve on what we've done and so forth. And so we put together a commission with 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 5 independents on that board. This bill is largely the commission's recommendations. We've left a few things out of the recommendations because it would be mostly harmful to Louisville. Some of the things we discussed we didn't mention at all. For example, in Louisville there's stacking of taxes. I know in some places there is, some places there isn't. We also have widely divergent policing in Louisville. We didn't address that in this bill. We also we did address the EMS issue and some other things that were important to the discussions that we had. All 3 of the members of this at the table here were members of the commission of the Louisville Metro Comprehensive Review Commission, and so I'll just go top to bottom if I could and talk about these as we did in the interim, as we had a meeting on this in the interim. The first provision is about Louisville EMS services. EMS services in Jefferson County is countywide, but when you look at the services that are provided, the area outside the old, we call it Urban Services District. That's kind of the old city of Louisville. So Urban Services District is the term that we use. So the Louisville EMS, even though paid for by the entire tax base, which, by the way, are 2/3 of our population live outside the USD, over 70% of the taxes are paid for by people who live outside the USD. So what we wanted to do there, even though all the taxpayers pay for the EMS and they're not receiving the services, is our Chapter 75 fire protection districts. There's some of those in a number of your districts as well. They provide fire protection, but they've also started to provide EMS protection. So our residents pay up to 10 cents more on $100 of their values of their home to pay for that. So we're paying for the Louisville EMS services that we don't get, and we're also paying for the secondary for the Chapter 75. And so what is also happening is our Chapter 75 EMS service providers are making runs inside the USD and not getting paid for them by Louisville EMS, and so or by the Louisville Metro. So, for example, St. Matthews, 60%, St. Matthews Linden, 60% of its runs are being made outside of its tax base. So the taxpayers in Linden and St. Matthews are paying all of Louisville EMS, not getting those services, paying all of St. Matthews Linden, getting those services, but then over half of the runs that are made by the EMS provider that only they pay for are made outside of their district. It's 40% at PRP. It's the highest obviously in St. Matthews Linden. So what we've said is we don't want to change that. The recommendation, by the way, from the commission was to make EMS a 4th USD service. Right now, only taxpayers in the USD get fire, lighting, and garbage. So if you don't live in USD, you do not get fire, lighting, and garbage. You have to pay separately for that. And so, but there's an extra fee that the people that live in USD are charged to pay for those 3 things. It doesn't cover it all, which we'll get to later. But so the recommendation of the commission was to make the EMS a 4th USD service. The mayor, who, by the way, I have high regard for, think he's doing a great job. He says, Representative Nemus, this is going to cost us $21 million more we don't have right now. So we backed off on this bill, and we're going away from the commission's recommendation to only say if, for example, the Linden St. Matthews Fire Protection District makes a run in USD, they'll pay $150 for the call out. But if they actually transport, then it's $300. So we're not making the taxpayers of USD pay for the Louisville EMS alone. We went away from that out of respect for Mayor Greenberg and to not harm Louisville Metro. So that's the EMS provision. With respect to the annexation provisions, we have two changes. One change says that you can't annex an area for the purpose of getting its occupational taxes. Our fear was that there would be a city that would annex Ford or GM or UPS or something of that nature just for the purpose of getting its occupational taxes. We don't want to allow that. We also said that the percentage will be of those who voted in the last presidential election rather than the overall vote totals, because everybody on this commission knows that this committee knows that the voter rolls are bloated. In my own home, for example, the gentleman that I bought my house from 9 years ago is still registered to vote in my house. He moved out of state. He's not been removed. And we all know when we knock on doors, it's not uncommon that we have 2 or 3 families ago that are still registered to vote. So the rolls are out of whack there. The third provision is boards and commissions. So what we found was when we look at boards and commissions in Louisville, which have taxing authority and spending authority, again, 2/3 of our population live outside USD. Almost all of the appointments came inside USD. Let me give you one example. MSD, which is very important, obviously, to all of our districts. The law says that they have to be geographically dispersed. There are 10 Senate districts in Louisville, in Jefferson County. It said no more than 1 can be appointed from each Senate district. And there are 8 members of the board. No more than 5 parties from one party can be on the board. Well, what happened is Louisville's a Democrat town, obviously. 5 of the 8 were Democrat appointees. Have no beef with that. But here was the remaining 3. They were all independents. 2 of them were Democrats until the month before they got appointed. And the other one is an independent for 20 years, but he's the Deputy Secretary of Justice for Beshear. So for all intents and purposes, 8 Democrats, and they followed the law. So we're wanting to make that clear on this. And that they also didn't have geographic diversity. So we're requiring them to look at geographic diversity when they're going to spend and receive tax dollars from the entire county. Sections 4 through 6 are obviously the most controversial. And when you talk to some people, I want to note that on the commission, though, the vote was 11-2. And the 2 Democrats who were appointed from the Metro Council both voted for this provision, and that is to make Louisville partisan rather than nonpartisan. Right now, the mayor and council run as nonpartisans. I want to say there are 414 cities. Right now, they run as partisans. Thank you. I misspoke. And we're moving to nonpartisan. There are 414 cities in Kentucky. 6 of them are partisan. The rest of them are nonpartisan. The next closest in size is 1/20th of the size of Jefferson County. Of the top most populous 30 cities in the whole country, 22 of those are nonpartisan. So 22 of the most populous in the whole country are most populous 30 in the country are nonpartisan, and only 6 out of the 414 in Kentucky are partisan. The next provision is the road fund dollars. So what we've seen, obviously, is when the Louisville Metro spends road dollars that it gets from Kentucky, they go to particular areas and not everywhere. And so what we've required here, we've not required equalization in spending or funding. What we've required is to look at all of the areas in Jefferson County to see where the road plans are needed. Our former mayor submitted 3 road plans to me. I think it was 29 roads overall, and only one of those roads was outside the Watterson, where 2/3 of our population live, and all of the increased population is occurring. So we're not going to require equalization funding, but we have to, you at least got to take a nod and look at those roads and see if they need to be funded. The last provision is Section 8 of the bill. Section 9 of the bill is emergency clause to get the Section 8 up and running immediately. Section 8 of the bill is from the PVA. Well, we had a member of the commission have a hunch that, and was based on data, that had, and she ended up being correct, that the place of the location of your home largely determined how closely you were assessed to the actual value. Let me put some meat on those bones. Give you an example. If your home is worth $200,000, it doesn't matter where it is. There may be more $200,000 homes here or there or somewhere else. But if your home is market valued at $200,000, the assessment is supposed to be within 90 and 110% of that $200,000 number. What we're finding is, based on where your home is in the community, is how far away your assessment is. There may be perfect explanations for that. Our PVA says that it's based on that there are legitimate reasons for that. I'm not taking I don't have a beef with that. But what I'm saying is, if it's true that one home, in particular homes, not just one home, but the general homes in one area is 90% of the assessment, and generally they're 50 or 60% of the assessment somewhere else. Well, that's not fair. And so we're trying to say, how can we address those problems? That, Mr. Chairman, is the bill.
Motion on the bill is amended by the sub.
I'm sorry, we have a motion on the bill, and we're going to open up for questions. And I believe Representative Meredith has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I just want to go back to the first section of the bill and something you said in there, and I'm trying to understand this because obviously Louisville and Jefferson County is different than everywhere else in the Commonwealth on just about everything. You were talking about the fire departments responding and taking over response within the boundaries of their districts where they get taxpayer dollars. And I understand mutual aid agreements and those kinds of things out in the state and how those work with fire departments and ambulance services and all that kind of stuff. But you're telling me that a large majority of the runs that are being made outside of the boundaries of their geographic area and territory that they represent and get tax dollars from? How does that happen?
So it's St. Matthews, Linden, 60%. The other ones are less than 50%, okay? But they're still making runs outside their district. The only one, I want to be clear, the only one where there's a majority is St. Matthews, Linden. And by the way, Louisville EMS, they only make 17% of the runs outside of USD. And they get paid by they're supposed to make them all over the county. It happens because Louisville has a lot of resource needs. And so I'm not going to cast aspersions, but what I'll say is this. They've not invested in Louisville EMS. The guys and gals at Louisville EMS do a wonderful job, but they're under-resourced. And so they don't have the resources to take care of USD, much less come out to us, even though we pay the taxes, just like everybody else does. So they have to have us covered. We have a rule in Jefferson County, and I'm sure you have it in Warren County as well, and we will not go away from that rule, and this bill does not go away from it. And the rule is the closest box makes the run. We'll figure all this out later. When Grandma needs an ambulance, she's getting the closest one. And so that's the reason that it happens, Representative.
Representative Nemes, Reverend Meredith, Bonnie Jung, Douglas Hills. Also, we found out in my district, Anchorage Middletown Fire District, when they did the closest box, a lot of times if they took a run first thing in the morning, they ended up being the closest box all day long. And many, many times, those ambulances did not come back into our district until it was time that the shift was over.
I'm going to have to pause one moment. We need a motion on the bill as amended by the committee sub. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Just a point
Now-
on that. Was the sub ever adopted, though?
Yes.
Okay, then you're good.
Okay, proceed.
So follow-up question on this, Representative, and I think I understand that, but is that happening, the closest box rule that you all are coming up with in Louisville, is that set up under a mutual aid agreement, or is that just what dispatch is doing per policy?
I think it's per policy. I have the chair of the St. Matthews Linden Fire here if he wants to come up. Fire EMS, if you want to. So, Rick, you want to come answer this question? So the answer is, the question is, Mayor, he's also the mayor of St. Matthews. The question, Mayor, is the closest box making the run, is that pursuant to the what?
A mutual aid
The
agreement.
mutual aid agreement, or does that just happen?
It's both. It's who is dispatched. Dispatch is countywide, and they do send the closest unit. Like I say, they're correct. Bonnie's correct. That sometimes they'll come in to work and make the first run into the urban services district and never come back till it's time to leave work, because when they're there, they become the closest unit to the tragedy. So it's like I say, 60% of our runs are outside of our district. So yes, there's a mutual aid agreement, and yes, it's done by dispatch.
And what this bill does is says when St. Matthews Linden makes that run, they get paid $150 if they go, and somebody else makes the run because they have to respond, and they get paid $30 if they're the ones that take the person to the hospital or whatever. $300 for that.
And if I could, and I'll finish with this, and it's really more of a comment than a question. And I certainly understand the idea of getting the closest service to you at any time. But I really have a problem with the idea that just because you made a run into the urban services district, you would keep your ambulance there.
Well, it's not our choice.
Or be tied up all day. But what I'm saying is, I would have a problem with dispatching that way. And I think as the board and as the administrative body and the chief of that department, you would be able to say, we can't be just staying in the urban services district all day long. We have a responsibility to our taxpayers. And that taxpayer should expect that service from you all and not be tied up outside of their boundaries.
That's what this is all about.
And so,
I mean, that's what
But
we
I think
do
you're just
say.
going to get paid for it now. You're not actually going to get the policy fixed.
Well, we would rather not have to spend all day outside of our district, but when someone needs an ambulance, we're going to make sure that need is taken care of.
and by the way, they should be paid for it if they make the run. That's unequivocally true.
I don't disagree with the payment part of it. I disagree with the fact that they could hold you out of your district all the time and not be able to serve your district because you're serving somebody that's not your taxpayer.
I agree with that, Representative. What I hope happens with this is that Louisville EMS puts more resources in Louisville Metro puts more resources in Louisville EMS, and they don't need the Chapter 75s to make so many runs.
Actually, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We have so many runs because of the need outside of our district that it's not only wearing out our people, but wearing out our equipment too. I mean, like I say, you start to work and you never get back to the station where you're assigned. That's trying on our people. Chief Nathan Mulvaney is in the audience. Could he come up and say something?
He wants to. Representative Bradshaw wants to say he's Fern Creek's guy.
Thank you for having me up. Chief Nathan Mulvey with Fern Creek Fire and EMS. I'm representing the Jefferson County Chapter 75 Chiefs Association. A little bit of clarity, Representative Meredith, on your question. There is actually a mutual aid agreement that is active and in place within the Chapter 75 fire protection districts for EMS service, but the City of Louisville is not part of that mutual aid agreement. The way it operates is the City of Louisville, through a policy that we all operate together under one dispatch service, to dispatch Louisville EMS and the Suburban EMS together in the same manner so that we all operate on a similar response matrix. We have all agreed that we would follow closest unit response with an understanding that the services will be dispersed equally as best as possible. We do recognize that there are times when we have to make runs out of our district. You know, I'll use my district as an example. If you look at the City of Louisville, our area covers basically the center third of the suburban area of Jefferson County, from the city border all the way to the county border south of us. Last year, the suburban districts made 27,000 calls in the City of Louisville. 16,000 of those plus were transports. My district alone made 6,600, 6,300 of those. So when you start breaking down the numbers, I don't think any one of us has an issue making the calls. The issue is the quantity at times that we have to make. And as Representative Nemes said, I think a lot of it is due to staffing. It's due to resources and equipment. But that burden is falling back on the suburban taxing districts.
And I'll finish with this, Mr. Chairman. I think the concern that I have, and I think something you all should take back in this discussion that is beyond the payment for these services and things like this, it's one thing to dispatch the closest. The closest might not need to be being looked at as where that ambulance is at any given time. It probably should be the base of where that ambulance is. Because you are potentially not serving the people who are paying you for your service if you're stuck outside of your district all day and just making calls all over the place. And I think that's a real problem from a procedural standpoint and from a policy standpoint. And I think you all should try to revisit that issue internally amongst all of you all.
Mr. Chairman, if I could quickly respond. Representative Meredith, I agree with that largely, but we are Louisvillians first. We're Fern Creekians and Middletownians and Jaytownians second. We're Louisvillians first, and I don't like it when my taxpayers have to pay for something they don't get, and then they have to pay for something that goes somewhere else. I don't like that, but I can't be for something that wouldn't be closest box because we're Louisvillians first, and I don't want somebody just across the line to have their house burned or to have grandma not have the service. And so while I get that, and I know my taxpayers are very upset about this, I couldn't support something like that because all I care about when grandma needs a run, whether it's your grandma, my grandma, or somebody else's grandma, is that she gets the ambulance. So we're not trying to change that.
And I want you to understand, if I may, I'm not talking about just the taxpayer part. I'm talking about the responsibility to the citizens that you serve. Because if their ambulance is outside of their district,
right,
and they're getting the closest box, it still may not be the box that should be the closest to them.
Yeah.
And they may still be having a delay because you're having to call somebody in from out of district to come into that district. And so I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you because I do think we need the best service possible and the quickest service possible. But I also think you have the concern about the people who are expecting and should be getting that service. Are they getting a delayed response because of this policy being outside?
Yes, sir. I hear you loud and clear. And by the way, we care about grandpas too.
Representative Proctor has a question.
Thank you, Chairman. My concern is the same as Representative Meredith. My question is to you, why are their services so limited? Why are EMS services so limited that they're having to go into the USD? Can you speak to that?
That's an ongoing challenge, Representative. When I was on Metro Council, that basically existed. The resources that are limited in Louisville and the USD area. And going back to what Representative Meredith said, it's a risk management challenge. And it goes back to the approach and how to manage that. And I think the overriding parameter in that is the responses should be a priority to that particular district where the taxpayers are. But also you have to go really above that as well. And that is, if there is a need and there is a deficiency, we have a moral obligation in order to serve and make sure we save that life or whatever the situation calls for. But this has been an ongoing issue, and I think this is one step. We're taking approach in terms of having correct that. I know there's been conversations. In fact, there's conversations going on right now to how to beef up the structure and also look at Metro or the USD or downtown Louisville in order to try to have more units available. And it goes back to shortage of workforce. It goes back to units. It goes back to all sorts of things. And that's why, in one small avenue, House Bill 200 we did last year, we put in paramedics. We put in other types of healthcare related services to get people through the pipeline in order to get them on the service in order to do that. So when it comes to paramedics and so forth, that was part of that process. That was in the back of my mind when I pushed that thing through. But the point's well taken. It's an ongoing challenge, and I know there's a lot of good intent on both sides to try to find a solution in order to serve the citizens.
Thank you.
I'm going to use the chair privilege to ask a question because I don't want to get lost on it. But I want to go back to Representative Meredith's point and just ask, and it may be to you, have you ever had instances where you've had a unit go out of your district and confined to that district because of proximity and then not have units to service your district, and you've had to pull units out of that district or other districts to come back in? And then when we start talking about grandmas, we got grandmas in both districts, and which one's closest and how long does it take them? Would that be close to maybe your concern? And I'm not trying to beat a dead horse or anything.
And if I can add to that, and I'll think about it again, everybody's a little different where they're at. And for everybody that doesn't know this, and I think most of the people around here know this, my dad's been a fire chief for 20 years. My brother's a firefighter. They're both EMTs as well. So I understand this issue in a lot of ways. But, in a small county like mine, you have 6, 7 volunteer fire departments in that county. they all have mutual aid agreements. They're all going to go help one another. But if my dad and his department have their truck out of district and something happens in their district, their responsibility is to get back to their district, not to call somebody that's 3 departments away to come into their district to take care of their thing. And so mutual aid agreements are supposed to work, but again, you've got to serve your district where you're actually serving and providing that coverage to. And I think that's what this policy creates some problems with. And that would be the easiest way to explain it from a small county perspective that I can think of.
And Representative Meredith, the bill as recommended, or I should say the recommendation of the commission, would have done that, got closer to that, because it would have made Louisville EMS just inside USD. The problem is, and I know this is against logical policy on the surface, Louisville and most cities in the country are hurting, and we can't pile on. And so that's not what we want to do. When I talked to Mayor Greenberg and he said, Representative Nemes, if you do this, it's going to cost the taxpayers inside USD $21 million more. I think it's fair. They should pay for what they get. But I don't want to do that to Louisville right now. So this is a step in that direction. Hopefully they get it fixed. If they don't, we can have that conversation. But Louisville can't afford that extra cost right now. We're on our knees. We're trying to get up. I think we got the right mayor to do that. But that's just not the step we need to take right now.
And like I said, I understand the budgetary and the money piece of this altogether. And that is not my concern in any of this.
Yeah.
It's just making sure that you don't have a hole where somebody that's expecting service doesn't get that service provided to them in a timely manner.
Sorry to intervene on that, but I think Representative Lockett has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We talked about what I'm going to bring up.
Yes, sir.
So I do have a question for you, and I guess kind of a comment afterwards. Can you go into more detail in terms of sections, I believe it's 4 through 7, the election portion? When you met as a committee and talked through this, what is the logic or the reasoning behind going to a nonpartisan election?
If Mayor Jung would like to take a first swing at it, and then I'll follow up.
I would. Thank you for that question. One thing I want to remind this committee is in 2021, when we brought nonpartisanship as far as election of the mayor, it passed out of this committee, but COVID hit the next day and nothing was brought up. We have realized that we're not moving the needle with our peer cities that we try to compare ourselves all the time. Nashville, Cincinnati, all of those are nonpartisan elections, nonpartisan types of government. Since merger, none of that has changed. I'm always of the opinion that potholes have no party. We all broke them. We all have to fix them. Police, fire, EMS, any kind of services, trash, none of that is political. And what local government is outside your front door government, and the type of government that takes care of services. What we are trying to do is stop that barrier that has been there of partisanship, and let's do it all and the mayor represents everyone despite political parties. All of our council folks represent everyone despite political parties. And we feel like in order to move the needle further, of the 80 cities in Jefferson County, only 2 are partisan. One is Shively and one is Louisville.
So when you look at across the country, obviously you've already heard the numbers. I've got to say 22 out of 30 are nonpartisan, of the biggest 30. That doesn't mean you should do it, but that's a data point. When you look at the 414 cities across the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and only 6 of them are partisan, and the next closest one to Louisville is 1/20th of our size, I think. That's another data point. It's not a reason you should do it, but it's another data point. I called Lexington. Former Mayor Gray says it was one of the best things about the system. It allowed him to come to Frankfort. He was the mayor of Lexington, not the Democrat from Lexington. I think that's important. You talk to Senator Amanda Mays Bledsoe, and she says that council, what it allows them to do is to get the best person, sometimes Democrat, sometimes Republican, to run. Like, for example, she ran the budget. And so it has those types of things in whatever city you're in. That partisan, it just doesn't, it's not the way it works in a partisan assembly. But also in Jefferson County, we have, obviously if you can win the primary, all you have to do is stay inside the Watterson. So you don't even have to know where Eastwood is, much less understand its significant environmental concerns. You don't even have to know Fern Creek High School. You don't have to know where Fern Creek Library is. By the way, it's a big area, it doesn't have one. You don't have to know the traffic issues in Valley Station. And we want the mayor, whoever it is, to have to hunt votes all around the county. So there's a lot of reasons. I know there's a philosophical difference. I know you're on one side of that question, I'm on the other. But those are the reasons.
Okay. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that answer. Thank you very much. And you're right. I philosophically disagree with that simply because, to me, an election is a transparency issue. An election is someone running for office that says, here's who I am. These are my philosophical beliefs. And I'm firmly of the opinion that if you have the power to raise taxes, then you ought to be completely transparent with the voters. As I go door to door in my community, the biggest question I get is not what party that I am, not what I believe. The biggest question I get is, hey, do you know the party of the city commissioners? That's the biggest question I get. And I think it's something that as we go forward as a state, and I know my friends at KLC don't agree with this, but that's okay. I think as we go forward as a state, I think it is an issue that we have to deal with, because if we want to be 100% transparent with voters, I believe the voters ought to know what party we're a part of. Yeah. And it doesn't have anything to do with trying to have one party gain over others, because in certain parts of the state, one would lose, one would win. It's not about that at all. It's about transparency and every voter knowing all that they can about the person that they're voting for.
Yeah, Sorry.
It's all right. Let me just put things, and I appreciate that comment, Representative. And I understand where you're coming from, but let me just give you a little historical perspective within a couple of sentences, and that is when the General Assembly was writing the bill based on the voters passing it to consolidate, it was going to be nonpartisan. And then at the last minute, it changed to partisan. That upset some people, but then again, it is. And now here we are in 2024 being partisan and so forth. And also, let me give you another perspective where I come from. And I think this should be nonpartisan. Because when I was first elected as a Metro Council member, I was sat in a room with other individuals in there, and we were going through the 5,000 ordinances to try to consolidate the city and county, what makes sense and so forth. In the person, and I won't identify this person, but I can see that person as I'm seeing you right now. She says, you know what, Fleming, we're going to tell you ours what to do. That's not what I signed up for, because I was here to represent the people in order, no matter if they're Democrat, Republican, because I'm going to be transparent, because I'm going to fix that pothole. I'm going to make sure that MSD is going to be fixed. I'm going to make sure that the roads are done. I'm going to make sure that we do whatever we can in terms of housing. That really bothered me in terms of being partisan. So I didn't really appreciate that in that comment, but I moved on, put it aside, and I'm going to be who I am in terms of providing and be a servant to the people of my district. So that sort of gives you a framework of where I'm coming from, and I understand in terms of having label with folks and so forth, but part of being a servant to the people is telling your message, telling what you're going to do and how you're going to serve them and make their lives a little better. But I understand where you're coming from. Totally understand that.
Just a quick follow-up.
Yes, sir.
I think for me, going back to kind of what you said, for me, since you brought up counties, counties are all partisan elections. The judge executive, the fiscal court, they're all partisan elections. So as a county officials have to run on that. So we have in the same geographic area a city and a county. A city is nonpartisan and a county is partisan. To me, that makes no sense. So if a county is going to be accountable to the voters, if a judge executive has to run under a party label, then so should the mayor. And so that, to me, that is a huge contradiction when we say, hey, cities, you don't have to do this, but counties, you do. So,
well,
thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would note that two things. One, This was the recommendation by a vote of 11-2 of the Metro Commission that we put together. And I respect your position. I know you want judges and school board members to be partisan as well. I just philosophically disagree with that. So I would suggest that, if you get excited about making Louisville partisan, if you're my friends on the other side, that's not the extent of this argument that he's making.
And I understand as well. I will also say that we do have a county judge. The county judge has no powers. They get paid $1 a year because of the way that the structure of the consolidated government is set up. Therefore, the county judge is elected in name only. And so what happens in other counties, I'm from Logan County. I understand we have cities and, county judges. But at the same time in Jefferson County, that does not work because the county judge doesn't have any type of power whatsoever.
Thank you. Representative Bentley has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment more so than a question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Representative Fleming, you just talked about a servant to the people. I represent 20,000 people and 325 square miles. And it's usually a 2-hour delay to get an ambulance. So I want to thank you guys for educating me so that I can help my people in the future. Louisville's educating me, and it's a privilege to stand here and listen to you. And thank you, because I know we're going to have problems in the future when we become a big industrial site in Greenup County. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Brown has a question or a comment.
Maybe a little of both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My overriding question, first question, is why did Louisville Jefferson County merge?
Well, I was 18 years old. I voted because your town was bigger than my town. That's the bottom line. I didn't want to merge, but they said Lexington's the biggest city in Kentucky. I said, okay, let's merge. I'm serious. And when I talked to Mayor Abramson, he said that was a major force of getting our town merged. I mean, that's just simple.
I think that's the first thing that we got to deal with, is that merger absolutely never happened in terms of actual merger. The 80-some small independent cities, first-class cities that Louisville, Jefferson County has been problematic, and it's been problematic ever since merger, in my opinion. Does anybody disagree with that?
I strongly disagree. If you go to Middletown and you say you're going to get rid of Middletown, you got to fight on your hands. If you go to J-Town, the same thing. Our small cities, I think philosophically you're definitely right, but our small cities are the ones we depend on. For example, now I'm going to say one thing. In some areas of our town, you have a police officer every 200 people. In some areas of our town, every 1,200 people. In my area of town, it's every 2,200 people. So St. Matthews had to get 40 officers. Anchorage had to get 20. J-Town had to get 40. Middletown had to get 20. Linden had to get 20. We pay extra for that, and we do that because Louisville's not taking care of business in the suburbs. So our small cities, if you ask any resident in a small city, they're going to fight for that city.
See, but the problem, in my opinion, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Okay.
The problem, as I see it, is that it's not merger. It is still having your small independent cities within Jefferson County. So there's been a war, in my opinion, from day one, 20 years ago. And we're still fighting that in terms of services and payment for those services. And I don't know, I'm not Solomon and don't know how to divide this baby or fall down on which side I come on. But it seems that this is a problem that has been brewing for 20 years, and it seems counterproductive, in my opinion, that there are payments that are being made to Louisville Metro in terms of the tax base, but then you're talking about another payment or another payment structure for EMS services and other services in Jefferson County.
Representative, let me put this. I don't disagree with you philosophically. Let me put it this way. The best thing for my people is to have the extra EMS. But let me be just as clear. The best thing for the West End resident is the suburban fire departments at EMS and the suburban cities. It is very good for that resident. Why? because Louisville doesn't have the resources to serve all of our county. And our suburban cities do that. If they went away, you got to start policing our area. If they go away, you have to start sending ambulances to our area of town, which you don't have to do now. We pay for those services, but we don't get the services. So the fact that these cities exist is a very good thing. Former Mayor Shavely sitting right beside you. The fact that these small cities exist is not only good for the person in Middletown, it's really good for the person who lives in the West End. And I want to be very clear about that, because otherwise they don't have the resources to provide services to the whole county.
The question still remains, how do you split that baby? How do you split Jefferson County up into 85 independent first-class cities and Jefferson County? And you have to take into consideration the urban service district that existed before you had merger, because you had city and county before merger. And what happened is that the merger was attempted, and it was wanting to be merged because Lexington was larger.
Mm-hmm.
And LFUCG came into being and caused a knee-jerk reaction in terms of how do you deal with that?
Well, we're trying our best.
And I mean, I can appreciate that, but it is problematic going forward how all of that gets done, and how all the citizens of Jefferson County, which is huge
right
in Kentucky, that how all services get taken care of, how all the citizens in Jefferson County are served by Louisville Metro.
I'm going to have to push us along to a couple other quick questions, and then we need to move on to vote. There's other committee meetings that are going to be happening, and some of our members are going to be leaving. So real quickly, we have Representative Stevenson. If you can I'm not trying to pick on you, but if you can make it
think
short.
You are.
so,
So just to be clear, I was on that commission, and most of this was very contentious and not backed by data. And a lot of times we would ask questions: how many times do they run? How much money does it cost? And there were no answers. And we were on a strict deadline to get this report out. So we just said, let's go with what we got, which was not a lot of nothing. And we also outreach to the community. The community was inside the urban district was adamant that we don't want a nonpartisan election. So where's home rule now? Why aren't we listening to the people that say they don't want it? Why are we going after Louisville? And then secondly, if I don't have a problem paying, but is it reciprocal? If the urban service goes in, does this bill make it reciprocal?
I want to thank you for that question. We pay taxes. We own Louisville EMS. So why would we pay them to come to a service that we already paying for? So the answer is, yeah, we paid 70% of over 70% of the taxes for that. Louisville EMS is not just paid for by USD. So when they come to J-Town, they're supposed to be coming to J-Town, which, by the way, they don't. But if they do, they're supposed to, because we're already paying for that. So it wouldn't make sense to have a secondary payment that's already being paid for.
And then the second issue, when this merger happened, they gave every city the opportunity to elect partisan or nonpartisan, and Louisville chose partisan. They also put some mechanisms in place. So if you're not happy or you're not satisfied, you request whatever you need. And what we found on this commission is there were not many requests made for services because they didn't feel like they were going to get it. So what we have now is the perfect example of, well, things are not working. Rather than do the hard work and make them work, let's just make some more laws and make some other people wrong and make sure they have little rights so that other people outside that have more, as he said, expensive homes, more income, can have their way with the people that have little. I'm done.
thank you. We'll move on. We've got Chester Burton. Representative Chester Burton.
Chair, I'm going to pass. Representative Lockett, he asked my question.
Okay, thank you. And are there any other questions? Okay. Representative Stalker, if you can just make it quick.
So I'd like to make a motion to lay this on the table. We have a lot of things that we're trying to accomplish in one bill, and on top of that, it seems like we have some more information and clarity that I think all could benefit from on this committee.
Okay, the motion is to lay the bill on the table. That's non-debatable, and we will have to. There would have to be a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a second, so that is non-debatable, and I believe that's subject to a roll call vote. A voice vote. So we're going to take a voice vote. Those in favor of laying it on the table will be a yay. Those in disfavor and object to that will be a no. So for the yays.
Yes.
For the nays. Nay. Motion does not carry. It fails. So we'll move on. We have had a motion and a second on the bill and the amendment, the committee sub that goes along with that. Before we make that, I would like to tell those at the table and all those on the committee, I know this has been a long, tedious road you've had to travel. There's been many people at the table, and I think you said the vote was 11-2?
On the partisan, it was 11-2. We took a vote on each of these provisions.
Okay. Anyway, I just want to, there again, tell you how much I appreciate it. I know this is a tough subject, tough matter. A lot of things go into it, but I do appreciate your work on this and what you're bringing to the table. And with that, I'd like to ask the secretary to call the roll.
Representative Bentley?
Yes.
Representative Bowling?
Yes.
Representative Bray?
Yes.
Representative Brown?
Explain my vote.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm voting no. I just don't understand how all this has been brewing for 20 years and it continues to brew. And I don't think this is a solution to the problem. So I vote no.
Representative Chester Burton?
I'm going to abstain at this moment until I have more information, because I believe that as we look at all the different offices, the county attorney, the Commonwealth attorney, I believe that it's going to be one or the other for all of those offices. So I'm going to abstain right now.
Representative Dixon? Representative Doan?
Aye.
Representative Fleming?
Explain my vote, and I was voting aye. Frankly, I was there at just about all the meetings except for one, and my interpretation is quite different from what has been spoken today in terms of trying to come about in a collaborative approach to try to move Louisville forward. It's going to be an ongoing challenge, in terms of cooperation, but I oversee about 20 suburban cities, and they would like to keep the current structure because they are closest to the citizens. And given the lack of resources, which is unfortunately we're trying to fix, that they have to compensate in order to provide services to their citizens in order to make things happen.
Representative Frazier Gordon? Representative Freeland?
Yes.
Representative Hart?
Yes.
Representative Imes?
Yes.
Representative Lockett?
Explain my vote, please.
Yes.
You know that sections 4 through 7 give me heartburn. But I also recognize the fact that until, and I say until because I'm very hopeful, until we get to a place in the Commonwealth where everybody plays on the same field, that be counties, that be cities, that be school boards, that be everybody, until we get there, I recognize the need for everybody to still be playing on the same field. And currently cities in the Commonwealth are nonpartisan. So for that reason, I vote yes.
Representative Meredith? Representative Proctor?
Yes.
Representative Raymer?
Yes.
Representative Stalker?
I'd like to explain my vote. I'm going to pass today. I just feel like I need to spend a little bit more time looking through the multitude of issues that this bill's trying to address and follow up with some additional people for some clarifying information. Thank you.
Representative Stevenson?
Explain my vote. It's ironic to me that we have several bills in these chambers where we want school boards to be partisan, but not mayoral elections. We can't make up our minds. Number two, why do we feel that a committee knows better than the people? Why should a committee approve what the people want? The people have told us what they want. So my vote is no.
Representative Thomas?
Aye.
Chairman Bridges?
Yes, and I'd like to follow up with an explanation that, again, I want to express my deep appreciation for the long hours and the sacrifice that's went into this committee and all the members. And just share with you that there are some of us on this committee that do realize that, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With that, the motion does pass with favorable expression that the bill as amended should pass. And I will yield to the Representative Bentley for a brief comment.
I'd like to report my vote on the first two issues, both being yes votes. When I was absent, HCR 68 and HB 323. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. With that,